Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're exploring the topic of buildings and their impact on society, from modern apartments and historic landmarks to future architecture and urban living. You'll hear a full mock interview first, and then we'll break down the key ideas behind each answer so you can clearly understand the perspectives being presented. Let's get started.
What types of buildings are popular in your country?
In my country, modern apartment complexes are extremely popular, especially in big cities where space is limited. A lot of young professionals prefer high-rise condos because they're convenient and close to workplaces and entertainment. At the same time, in suburban areas, detached houses are still very desirable for families who want more privacy and space. Shopping malls and mixed-use developments are also becoming more common, combining offices, retail stores, and residential units in one place. Recently, there's also been a trend toward eco-friendly buildings with sustainable designs. Overall, practicality and location seem to matter more than architectural style.
Do you think a city's buildings affect its vibe or atmosphere? Why?
Absolutely. I think buildings play a huge role in shaping a city's atmosphere. For example, cities with historic architecture often feel charming and culturally rich. On the other hand, places filled with glass skyscrapers tend to feel fast-paced and business-oriented. Architecture influences how people behave and interact in public spaces. Even the height and spacing of buildings can affect whether a place feels crowded or open. So, in my opinion, buildings don't just define a skyline, they shape the entire experience of living in a city.
Why do people visit historical buildings?
People visit historical buildings mainly to connect with the past. These places give us a tangible sense of history that you just can't get from reading a textbook. Many historical buildings also have impressive craftsmanship and unique designs that aren't common today. For some visitors, it's about cultural pride or understanding their country's heritage. Others simply enjoy the aesthetic beauty and the stories attached to these structures. I think historical buildings allow people to step outside their daily routines and experience something meaningful.
How do people in your country feel about old buildings?
I'd say opinions are somewhat mixed. Many people appreciate old buildings because they represent cultural heritage and identity. However, some view them as outdated or impractical, especially if they require expensive maintenance. Younger generations tend to value modernization, but there's still respect for historically significant sites. In urban areas, there's often debate about whether to preserve old structures or replace them with new developments. Personally, I think most people recognize their value, even if they don't actively advocate for preservation.
Do you agree that old monuments and buildings should always be preserved?
I don't think they should always be preserved without exception. While many monuments have historical or cultural importance, some buildings may no longer serve a purpose or could be unsafe. Preservation requires significant funding and planning. However, I strongly believe that structures with clear historical significance should be protected. It's about finding a balance between honoring the past and accommodating modern needs. Blind preservation without considering practicality might not always be the best approach.
What differences do you find between historical and modern buildings?
The most obvious difference is in design and materials. Historical buildings often feature intricate details and handcrafted elements, whereas modern buildings focus on minimalism and efficiency. In terms of function, contemporary structures are usually designed with technology and sustainability in mind. Older buildings may lack insulation or accessibility features that are standard today. Another difference is the purpose. Historical buildings often symbolize cultural values, while Modern ones prioritize practicality. Overall, the contrast reflects changing priorities over time.
How do iconic buildings influence tourism in a city?
Iconic buildings can significantly boost tourism because they become symbols of the city. When people think of a place, they often picture a famous landmark associated with it. These structures attract international visitors who want to see them in person. They also generate economic benefits for surrounding businesses like hotels and restaurants. Additionally, iconic architecture can strengthen a city's global image and branding. In many cases, a single building can transform a city into a major tourist destination.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of living in high-rise buildings?
Living in a high-rise building has several advantages, especially in urban areas. Residents often enjoy great views, enhanced security, and convenient access to amenities like gyms or supermarkets. It can also be more affordable than owning a house in the city center. However, there are downsides, such as limited personal space and potential noise from neighbors. In emergencies, evacuation can also be challenging. So, while high-rise living is practical, it may not suit everyone's lifestyle.
What do you think buildings will be like in the future?
I imagine future buildings will be much more technologically advanced and environmentally friendly. We'll probably see more smart buildings equipped with automated systems for lighting, temperature, and security. Sustainability will likely become a top priority, with renewable energy sources integrated into design. Architects may also experiment with flexible spaces that can adapt to different needs. Additionally, urban areas might feature more vertical gardens and green rooftops. Overall, future architecture will likely focus on efficiency, sustainability, and improving quality of life.
Should functionality be more important than appearance when designing public buildings?
In my opinion, functionality should come first, especially for public buildings like hospitals or schools. These spaces need to serve practical purposes efficiently and safely. However, appearance shouldn't be completely ignored because attractive design can positively influence people's mood. Ideally, architects should strike a balance between form and function. A visually appealing building can become a source of pride for the community, but if I had to choose, I'd prioritize usability over aesthetics.
All right, that brings us to the end of the interview. Now let's go through each question and unpack the main ideas in more depth. I'll expand on the key points so you can clearly see the perspectives behind each response. Question 1. What types of buildings are popular in your country? Joseph explains that popularity largely depends on location and lifestyle. He notes that in major cities, high-rise apartment complexes dominate because space is limited and property prices are high. He adds that young professionals prefer condos for convenience and proximity to work and entertainment. In suburban areas, however, he points out that detached houses remain desirable, especially for families seeking privacy and larger living spaces. He also mentions the rise of mixed-use developments and eco-friendly buildings, suggesting that practicality and sustainability are shaping modern preferences. Question 2. Do you think a city's buildings affect its vibe or atmosphere? Why? Joseph clearly believes they do. He contrasts historic architecture, which creates charm and cultural richness, with modern skyscrapers that signal economic activity and fast-paced living. He argues that design influences how people interact in public spaces. He also suggests that factors like building height and spacing affect whether a city feels crowded or open. In his view, architecture shapes not just appearance, but everyday experience. Question 3. Why do people visit historical buildings? Joseph emphasizes connection to the past. He explains that historical buildings offer a tangible experience that goes beyond reading about history. He highlights their craftsmanship and unique design, which reflect the skills of earlier generations. He also mentions cultural pride and a desire to better understand their country's heritage as motivating factors. Overall, he presents these visits as meaningful experiences that allow people to step outside their daily routines. Question 4. How do people in your country feel about old buildings? Joseph suggests that opinions are mixed. He points out that many people value old buildings as symbols of heritage and identity. At the same time, he acknowledges that they can be expensive to maintain and sometimes impractical. He also highlights generational differences, noting that younger people may favour modernisation. This creates an ongoing debate, particularly in urban areas, between preservation and redevelopment. Question 5. Do you agree that old monuments and buildings should always be preserved? Joseph takes a balanced position. He argues that while historically significant structures deserve protection, not every old building should automatically be preserved. He mentions concerns about safety, usefulness, and funding. He believes cities must carefully evaluate cultural value before making decisions. Ultimately, he supports preserving meaningful heritage, while still allowing room for modern development. Question 6. What differences do you find between historical and modern buildings? Joseph focuses on design and purpose. He explains that historical buildings often feature intricate details and handcrafted elements, reflecting artistic and cultural expression. In contrast, he describes modern buildings as minimalist and efficiency-driven. He also points out that contemporary architecture integrates technology and sustainability. Through this comparison, he shows how architectural styles reflect changing social priorities. Question 7. How do iconic buildings influence tourism in a city? Joseph argues that iconic buildings become symbols of a city. He explains that people often associate destinations with a specific landmark. He notes that this recognition attracts international visitors and boosts local businesses. He also suggests that strong architecture enhances a city's global image. In some cases, he believes a single landmark can transform tourism entirely. Question 8. What are the advantages and disadvantages of living in high-rise buildings? Joseph presents both sides. He explains that high-rise living offers convenience, security, and shared amenities, especially in city centres. He adds that residents often enjoy impressive views and accessibility. However, he also points out drawbacks such as limited personal space and potential noise. He mentions that emergencies can be more complicated in tall buildings. Overall, he suggests this lifestyle suits some people, but not everyone. Question 9. What do you think buildings will be like in the future? Joseph predicts greater technological integration. He imagines smart systems controlling lighting, temperature, and security. He also emphasizes sustainability, suggesting renewable energy will become standard. He mentions flexible interior layouts that can adapt to changing needs. Additionally, he envisions more green features such as rooftop gardens. His perspective highlights efficiency and environmental responsibility as future priorities. Finally, should functionality be more important than appearance when designing public buildings? Joseph prioritizes functionality. He argues that public buildings must first serve practical purposes efficiently and safely. However, he does not dismiss appearance entirely. He suggests that attractive design can positively influence mood and create community pride. In the end, he supports a balanced approach, though he clearly places usability first. That wraps up today's discussion on buildings and their impact on society. If you found this helpful and want more in-depth speaking practice like this, you can join the channel membership for extra lessons. I'll see you in the next lesson.